Over 4 decades ago, an extraordinary intelligence detailed a planetary schism as humanity's final test. Look now at the chasm between Washington and Beijing. This is no longer foreign policy, it is the terrifying fulfillment of that warning. The prophecy is now the present. The source of this warning is a dense, challenging text from the early 1980s known as the Law of One, or more commonly, the Material of Ra, rather than a work of simple faith. It presents itself as a highly complex philosophical and metaphysical treatise. Its origin, through a process described as channeling, is controversial, yet its internal consistency and the depth of its cosmological framework have commanded serious study for decades, setting it apart from more simplistic materials and demanding a high level of intellectual engagement from any who would seek to understand its contents. Within its pages lie comprehensive discussions on the nature of reality, the architecture of the cosmos, the evolution of consciousness, and the interplay of free will and density. The text does not offer simple answers but instead provides a sophisticated framework for understanding our existence. It posits that the universe is a single, conscious being, and all of us are parts of it, learning and growing through various stages of experience. The sheer scope of its philosophical and scientific postulations continues to challenge and fascinate researchers who are willing to look past its unconventional origins to the profound message it holds for humanity at this critical juncture. The central mechanism for evolution described within this material is the concept of polarization. It is not a simplistic duality of good versus evil, but rather a conscious choice between two distinct paths of service, which in turn determines the soul's evolutionary trajectory. This choice is the fundamental purpose of our current third density experience. One path is that of service to others, a recognition of the unity of all beings and a life dedicated to love, understanding, and compassion. The other is the path of service to self, a focus on control, manipulation, and the consolidation of personal power over others to achieve one's goals. Both paths are recognized as valid, though vastly different, ways of learning the lessons of this density. The path of service to others progresses through the opening of the heart and the understanding of universal love, while the path of service to self advances through the separation and control of all that is perceived as other. The text makes it clear that to progress, or to be harvested into the next density of experience, a conscious entity must achieve a significant polarization toward one of these two extremes. Indecision or apathy is not a viable option for spiritual advancement in this cosmic system. Herein lies the core of the terrifying warning. The entity Ra stated that the population of Earth was dangerously unpolarized, hovering in a state of spiritual indecision. This collective apathy created a spiritual vacuum, a condition that, according to cosmic law, necessitates the introduction of intense and powerful catalysts. These catalysts are designed not to punish but to force a choice, to dramatically increase the pressures on each individual soul so that a clear and definitive polarization can be achieved before the close of the current 75,000-year cycle, a cycle which is ending in our present time. The ultimate manifestation of this catalyst, the final warning, was the potential for a planetary schism. This would not be a mere political disagreement but a fundamental cleavage of the collective human consciousness, externalized in the form of two opposing global power blocks. These blocks would become the physical anchors for the two polarities of consciousness, creating a global chessboard where the very soul of humanity would be the prize. The tension between these two forces would escalate to an extreme degree, forcing every nation and, eventually, every individual to align with one side or the other, thereby completing their polarization. In this context, we must analyze the United States not as a heroic figure, but as the primary global archetype of service to self, veiled in the language of freedom and individualism. Its empire is not one of overt territorial conquest, but of economic and cultural domination. Through its control of global finance, its vast military-industrial complex, and the pervasive influence of its media, it has projected a model of existence based on relentless consumption, individual achievement at any cost, and the subtle control of populations through debt and manufactured desire. This is service to self operating under a brilliant disguise of liberty. Conversely, we must view China not as a simple villain, but as a more direct and unapologetic archetype of service to self, expressed through the lens of collectivism. Its power is derived from centralized control, the absolute surveillance of its population through technology, and strategic economic expansion designed to make the world dependent upon its industrial might. The state, rather than the individual, is the supreme entity to be served. This model sacrifices personal freedom not for the genuine good of others, but for the ultimate power and preservation of the controlling entity itself, which is the very definition of a negatively polarized system. Observe how, despite their seemingly opposite ideologies of democracy versus authoritarianism, both superstates pursue the identical ultimate goal, the consolidation of power and the control of global resources and narratives for their own benefit. The conflict between them is not a battle for the soul of humanity, but a competition between two different methodologies of control. Two different operating systems for a service-to-self planet. They are the two great beasts of the prophecy, each demanding allegiance and each promising a form of security in exchange for spiritual sovereignty. drawing the world into their gravitational pull. The shadows of these empires reveal their true nature with chilling clarity. The American military-industrial complex, thriving on perpetual conflict and fear, functions as a mechanism to transfer immense wealth to a select few while maintaining global hegemony through force. In parallel, China's burgeoning social credit system represents the pinnacle of technological control, a digital panopticon that dictates every aspect of a citizen's life based on their perceived loyalty to the state. Both systems, though different in their execution, are perfect expressions of the desire to control and manage others for the benefit of a ruling elite. The inescapable conclusion is that these two nations have ceased to be mere countries and have instead become the living embodiments of the planetary schism Ra warned of. They are the north and south poles of a negative magnetic field enveloping the globe, forcing every other nation to align with their current. The ideological battle is a facade. The true conflict is a struggle for planetary dominance between two masters of the service-to-self path. And we are all living on the battlefield, whether we realize it or not. This is not a political analysis. It is the identification of the fulfilled prophecy in our daily headlines. The era of globalization, once hailed as a force for unity, was in truth the preparation of this battlefield. It created a world so deeply interconnected that any fracture would send catastrophic shockwaves through the entire system. This interdependence was not a path to peace, but the creation of a weapon. The trade war that began several years ago was not a mere policy dispute. It was the first overt act of this planetary cleaving, the beginning of the deliberate and painful decoupling of the world's two largest economic engines, a process from which there is now no turning back. The struggle for dominance over semiconductor technology is the heart of this new Cold War. This is not about building better smartphones or faster computers. It is about controlling the foundational hardware of the 21st century, the very nervous system of our increasingly digital world. The nation that controls the most advanced microchips will control the future of artificial intelligence. And the nation that controls artificial intelligence will have the ultimate tool for surveillance, prediction, and the absolute control of its own population and that of its rivals. We are witnessing the construction of two separate, parallel global systems. China's Belt and Road Initiative is a vast network of infrastructure and economic influence designed to create a new, Sino-centric world order. In response, the West scrambles to form its own economic and technological alliances, explicitly designed to counter and contain this expansion. These are not just competing trade blocs, they are the blueprints for two mutually exclusive realities, two separate cages vying for global dominance, forcing every smaller nation to choose its future master. The development of artificial intelligence has become the ultimate arms race. In the West, it is driven by corporate giants who seek to predict and modify human behavior for commercial gain, a system of surveillance capitalism. In the East, it is driven by the state, which seeks to create an all-seeing network to ensure social stability and absolute political control. Both paths, however, lead to the same destination, a world where human thought and action are constantly monitored, analyzed, and manipulated by non-human intelligence for the benefit of a few. This pursuit of technological omniscience is the direct fulfillment of RAS warnings about technologies that could be used to imprison consciousness. The algorithms that curate our social media feeds, the facial recognition cameras that monitor our public spaces, and the digital currencies that promise to track our every transaction are the bricks and mortar of this prison. The conflict between the United States and China is accelerating the construction of this global panopticon, with each side justifying its own measures as necessary to defend against the other. As the economic and digital realms cleave apart, so too does the physical. The relentless and accelerating military buildup in the Pacific is the most visible sign that this conflict has moved beyond the theoretical. We see the constant modernization of nuclear arsenals, the development of hypersonic weapons that defy traditional defenses, and the formal militarization of space and cyberspace. This is not the posturing of rivals. This is the deliberate preparation for a kinetic conflict of a scale the world has not seen in 80 years. The islands and waters of the South China Sea have become the flashpoint, the geopolitical fault line where the tectonic plates of these two empires grind against one another. The question of Taiwan's sovereignty is no longer a regional issue but has been elevated to the single most likely trigger for a global conflagration. It is the symbolic and strategic centerpiece of the entire conflict, the place where the final warning could manifest as fire and steel, dragging the rest of the world into a war that no one can truly win. In parallel with the hardware of war, the software of conflict is being deployed with lethal efficiency. The most critical battle is being fought in the minds of the global population. This is a war of narratives, a relentless campaign of propaganda and disinformation designed to solidify loyalty and utterly demonize the other. In the West, China is portrayed as a monolithic authoritarian threat to freedom. In the East, America is portrayed as a decadent, hypocritical, and failing empire. Both narratives contain elements of truth, but both are designed to erase nuance and cultivate hatred. This psychological warfare forces individuals into simplistic, binary thinking, making it impossible to hold a balanced view or to see the common humanity in those on the other side. This engineered division is the essential prerequisite for war. Before soldiers can be sent to fight, the population must be convinced that the enemy is less than human, an existential threat that must be neutralized. This process of mental and emotional polarization, amplified by social media and partisan news outlets, is now terrifyingly advanced, creating the fertile ground of fear and anger from which physical conflict grows. We must now consider the most esoteric, yet perhaps most crucial, element of this framework, the influence of what the Law of One refers to as the Orion Group. This is described as a negatively oriented confederation of entities, whose primary interest in Earth is to incorporate it into their own empire of service to self. Whether one interprets this as a literal extraterrestrial force or as a powerful archetype for the principles of control and entropy, its functional effect on our world is the same. It thrives on and actively promotes division, chaos, and fear. This influence operates not through overt invasion but through subtle psychic manipulation of the global elite, whispering in the ears of those already inclined toward the pursuit of power. It amplifies paranoia, greed, and the desire for control, pushing leaders on both sides of the schism toward decisions that inevitably lead to greater conflict. The constant cycle of provocation and escalation we witness often defies rational, long-term strategic sense for either nation, yet it perfectly serves a third party that benefits from the ensuing chaos and the spiritual harvest of fear. Look at the real-world systems that benefit from this escalating tension. The international arms industry reaps astronomical profits. The global financial system thrives on the debt created by massive military spending. A small cadre of elites in both nations consolidates its power and wealth as the general population is distracted and impoverished by the constant threat of war. This is the earthly manifestation of the Orion agenda, to use the conflict between the two great powers as a planetary harvesting machine for negative energy, pushing humanity toward a future of total subjugation. While all of these signs have been escalating for years, a specific catalyst has recently occurred, a point of no return that has fulfilled the final component of the warning. This was not a loud explosion but a quiet, strategic move that has been largely misinterpreted by the mainstream. It was the moment the economic decoupling became truly irreversible. The moment a critical piece of technological or financial infrastructure was fully weaponized by one side against the other, forcing a permanent division of the global system. The exits have now been sealed. This event, which you can identify in the most recent strategic policies coming from both Washington and Beijing, has removed the last vestiges of mutual dependence that once acted as a brake on open conflict. The fragile web of globalization has been decisively torn. This action ensures that the two blocs will now accelerate their divergence, each seeking to build a self-sufficient empire capable of surviving a total separation from the other. The time for maneuvering is over. The collision course is now locked in. The immediate implication is that we are entering an era of permanent crisis. Expect a rapid acceleration of all the trends we have discussed: frantic military posturing, increasingly hostile rhetoric, and the brutal squeezing of all non-aligned nations to force them to choose a side. The concept of neutrality will soon become an impossibility. The world will be functionally divided into two camps, with a digital and physical iron curtain descending between them, far more pervasive and total than the one that defined the last Cold War. This new phase will see the open weaponization of everything. Supply chains will be disrupted to create scarcity and social unrest in rival nations. Energy flows will be used as tools of blackmail. Food security will become a primary front in this global war. The goal is to weaken the adversary from within, to create chaos and despair, to wear down the psychological and spiritual resilience of the population until they are willing to accept any solution that promises a return to stability, no matter the cost to their freedom. This leads to the ultimate danger, the final endgame of this entire planetary drama. The objective is not for the United States to defeat China, or for China to defeat the United States. From the perspective of the service-to-self forces orchestrating this conflict, the ideal outcome is a world so traumatized by war, economic collapse, and social chaos that its surviving population will beg for a new system of global governance to ensure that such a catastrophe can never happen again. This is the classic dialectic of problem, reaction, solution. Create the problem, a terrifying global conflict. Generate the reaction, overwhelming fear and a desire for safety at any cost. Then present the solution, a centralized, technologically administered world government that promises peace and stability in exchange for the complete surrender of national and individual sovereignty. This is the true checkmate that the Orion Group has been working toward for millennia, using humanity's own divisions against it. Choosing a side in this manufactured conflict is a fatal error. It is a false choice, a distraction designed to keep us locked into the paradigm of division. Both paths, whether wrapped in the flag of democracy or the flag of collectivism, lead to the same destination for the individual soul. A technologically managed system of control that quashes dissent, eliminates privacy, and severs the connection to one's own spiritual authority. This was Ra's final warning, the moment humanity, blinded by fear, would be tricked into voluntarily walking into its own cage. Yet even in the face of this terrifying fulfillment, The source material offers a path out. It is not a path of fighting or resistance in the traditional sense. The only way to truly win this game is to refuse to play it. This does not mean passivity or ignorance. It means making a conscious, deliberate, and powerful choice to transcend the duality of the conflict entirely by activating the opposite polarity, the path of radical, unconditional service to others. This is the forgotten third option. While the great powers battle for control of the material world, the real work is done within the heart of each individual. It means choosing empathy over judgment, compassion over fear, and unity over division. It means refusing to participate in the demonization of any group of people. It means focusing one's energy on building strong, resilient local communities based on cooperation and mutual support, creating islands of sanity in a sea of manufactured chaos. The law of one suggests that a surprisingly small percentage of the population, if they can achieve a genuine and potent polarization in service to others, can create a resonant field of consciousness that can positively influence the entire planet. Their coherent energy of love and unity acts as a powerful counterbalance to the chaotic energy of fear and division, making a positive planetary harvest possible. This is the ultimate act of spiritual sovereignty, to become a beacon of light in the encroaching darkness. The fulfillment of this dark prophecy, therefore, is not just a sentence of doom. It is the ultimate catalyst. It is the final urgent call for each of us to stop sleepwalking through our lives and to make a conscious, unequivocal choice. The pressure is designed to force us to decide who we truly are and what kind of future we wish to create. The old world of indecision is over. The great schism is here, not just between nations, but within every human heart. We have seen how a metaphysical text from 4 decades ago predicted with chilling precision the architecture of our current global conflict, culminating in a recent event that has sealed this terrifying division. The warning has been fulfilled. But the final choice, the most important one, does not belong to governments or armies. It belongs to each of us, in this very moment. The question is no longer what will happen, but what will you choose? Reflect on this. Research the sources for yourself, and share this video if it resonated with your search for truth. The awakening of one is the awakening of all. Subscribe to continue decoding the matrix of our reality together.